What does DaVinci have to do with mixing electronic drums? Actually, quite a lot. Let me show you two examples. The first example is where I used the DaVinci mixing technique to mix my tech house drums, and the second one is going to be raw, fully unmixed example. So let's check it out. So as you can hear, the first example sounds so much better than the second one, and I think you all will agree with me on this. And in this video, I'm going to teach you the DaVinci mixing method, and this is the method that all the pros use to mix their tech house or any sort of electronic drums, whether it's house, techno, or anything electronic. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Vlad, and I create superstar music producers. If you're interested in coaching and you want to work one-on-one with me on your music, all the links are down below, so feel free to book a call with me right away or send me a message if you want to know more about my coaching program. And without further talking, let's get started with the video. What is the DaVinci method? We are breaking down the mixing process to three simple pillars. Each of the pillars is inspired by DaVinci's masterpieces. So I'm going to be showing you examples, and I'm going to illustrate this with DaVinci's masterpieces. So let's talk about the pillar number one, which is going to be the EQ harmony. So when you look at the proportions of the Vitruvian Man, you can see how well he fits the frame, and overall the proportions are perfectly balanced. So this is essentially what we are trying to achieve with our electronic drums when we are applying EQ. So we want to try and balance everything so everything just sounds balanced, clean, and proportional. So we can use the same logic in mixing. Think of individual elements as proportions and your whole mix as a frame. So let me give you a diagram so you can understand what I'm talking about. Let's say we have a drum sound and we have a couple of unbalanced proportions. So it's a little bit too much on 500 hertz and a little bit too much on 400 kilohertz. So what we're essentially trying to do with the EQ here is we are trying to balance all of the proportions to make sure that it sounds good, right? So let's talk about the individual versus the group EQ, and I'm going to show you in Ableton how everything is looking like. So essentially, you want to use EQ on individual sounds if you have some specific frequencies that you want to address. So you can be a little bit more aggressive with this, and you can use group EQ for overall soft shaping with rounded, balanced curves. So I would recommend to stick with softer curves overall when possible, both in groups and individual channels. So now let's jump back into Ableton, and I'm going to be showing you some of the examples how I mixed some of the drum sounds. So first of all, I'm going to disable all the processing, and we're going to start with the kick, the bass, and some of the hats. So let me mute everything, and I'm going to show you what I did. So let me solo and let's play. So overall, I really like the sound of the hi-hats, but there was one problem that I noticed, which is the hi-hats are kind of like a little bit too loud on the highs. So I checked with the RealPhones plugin. It's a really good one. Like, I 100% recommend, and this is one of my secret tools when it comes to be able to hear the problematic frequencies in my mix. So once we do this, so one of the things that you can do is you can obviously reduce the volume of the sound. But still, I felt like I wanted to balance my hats a little bit. So what I did is I boosted at 1.3 kilohertz, and I reduced the top end on the hats. And this is how it ended. So you see, it became like way more balanced and just so much better. And another example that I can give you is going to be the snares. So let's listen to the snares here. So what I did to the snare is also really, really simple. It looks complicated, but in reality, it's really, really simple, right? So let's check it out. This is with the EQ. Now let's mute that. So what I did here, I cut a little bit with the low shelf, the low end. I boosted a little bit with the dynamic EQ. The fundamental harmonic, so the body of the snare. And then I decided to cut the boxiness of the snare. Just to show you what sound I wanted to get rid of is this. It's a little bit too much in terms of the mid. So I was like, hey, let me... So again, there's no right or wrong. It's more like what kind of sound you're looking for. Another example would be maybe you actually want to boost the mids on the snare, and it could sound good. Maybe you want to do like this. Actually sounds pretty good. So I like the both of the curves and the settings that I did. Right, so we can do like this, and then just one more time. I actually, you can hear it becomes a little bit too mid-focused, so I wanted to make it more, a little bit brighter and thinner, but still keep the main body of the snare. So this is one of the examples that I wanted to show you. What else do we have here? I think this is a really, really simple example. So on the shaker, it's... Just if I solo, the difference is pretty subtle, right? So it's all pretty simple. So let's go back to the presentation. So again, to summarize, you can be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to the individual channels, and for the group settings, try to be more gentle. So for example, let's talk about the group EQ example. So what I had, I think on the hats and also like overall on the drums, I had a little bit unbalanced highs. And I also wanted to reduce a little bit on the low mids or the lows, you know, you name it. So I used the high shelf to make the whole group darker. And let's go back to the presentation, and I'm gonna show you. So let me not solo, but do all the drums here, and we're gonna start just with the regular EQ, right? So let's listen to how this all sounds. And now let's check without. It was already pretty good. Now let's check with real phones. So what we can do here is we can go on mix focus and select the groove preset. This one is really good. Listen to the drums. So there's so much more definition. I got so much more definition by reducing the stereo image of the drums. So everything below 300 is a little bit more on the middle. I also boosted here with the dynamic EQ to increase the punch of the drums, but just on the mono. So pay attention to the mid-side EQ here. We can do even more of that. But it's just like a little bit too much, right? So again, listen critically, and then you will understand how much of that you will need. And then I reduced a little bit on the 7K, so just minus 2.6 decibels, which is okay. It's not really that much. It's totally fine, right? And a little bit on the sides. So the difference is that here I'm boosting on the sides, but mid also could work. Actually, let's go with the mids here, because the side, it doesn't really work in this case. So that's it, right? And this is an example how easy and how simple it is to EQ individual elements when it comes to the drums. I'm not going to show you like everything. I'm just giving you the theory because it will all really depend on the mix. So for example, there's another sound that I want to show you, which is going to be this one. I didn't end up using it at the end of the day, but you can see like it's a little bit too harsh. So with this dynamic EQ, we are making the sound like a lot softer. So this is it, I think, with the EQ. Let me just double check if there's anything else I wanted to talk about the EQ. Yeah, again, look, this is the example that I wanted to show you. So this is the hat example, just like the very first one that we talked about, right? So we're boosting mids for the body, we're reducing highs for the softer sound, and that's it. So how do you know like when to boost and when to cut? Again, the answer is really simple. It is going to be the real phones. I'm not like sponsored, endorsed by this plugin. I wish I was, but at the end of the day, this is the best tool, especially if you're mixing the headphones. It allows you to hear any issues in your drums, right? So again, let's disable. Like it's a little bit too bright. Now it just sits perfectly. So this is the EQ module. So kind of simple. I think it's pretty easy to understand. So again, just to summarize, think of the Vitruvian Man and think of the proportions. So you want to think of your drums as like the whole mix as a box, and then the drums and individual sounds as the proportions, like the Vitruvian Man, right? So make sure that everything is balanced, make sure that everything sits right. So if you hear any like, I don't know, like sibilances, harsh frequencies, stuff like that. So just balance that with the EQ. So let's talk about the pillar number 2, which is going to be the saturation sculpting. So let's take a look at the Da Vinci Last Supper. So if you look at the colors of this masterpiece, let's take the room, for example. So the room is dark and green, but the background is very bright. So pay attention how he uses color to position different elements, to put the accents on different elements in this masterpiece, right? So take a look now how he uses colors. So you can see Jesus in the middle, he stands out. Red and blue colors are vivid and eye-catching. So he's like in the middle. This is where the focus is. But for example, this woman doesn't stand out that much because the color is darker. And same we could say for the room, right? So this is again like visually a really good example how you can use Da Vinci's masterpieces to illustrate concepts in music production, right? So takeaway, you can position your sounds in the mix with different colors, which is saturation. So saturation sculpting, this is how you essentially use saturation. Let's say we are missing on low mids and highs. So with saturation, we can reshape frequency response and we can get those low mids and those highs in our mix, especially for the drums, right? So for example, again, to show you visually, the low end here is not saturated and the top end, the right band is very saturated, so like it's more red. And moreover, it's not just the brightness, but also the tonal balance that we can control with saturation. So again, let's go back into Ableton and let me show you some of the examples. I'm going to show you both the group saturation and the individual saturation. So first, let's work a little bit on the group. This guy is like way too big. All right, let's make it this line. So I'm going to apply 100% to the group here. So just so I could illustrate the concept basically. So let's do like this. And we're going to go one by one. So let's do like this. I'll just disable some of them so you will understand how we're using that. So this is just the raw sound. I started with the mids because this is like in the drums, this is where the, not really the clarity, but the body of the sound is. So let's check it out. you can use different algorithms. In this case, I use the old tape algorithm because it gives this like gritty and nice character. So let's start with this. So you can hear how much bright, not really the brightness, but the character it gives to the sound. We can also control the dynamics with the dynamics knob. But I wanted to make it like a little bit squashed with the character. Now let's talk about the top end. So take a listen to the top end. You can make the top end really, really bright and put an accent on that as well, depending on how much saturation you apply to your drum group, right? So, little guy, the cat, I gotta reposition him. So, pay attention to this. No saturation. And now with a little bit of saturation, we are adding those harmonics. So we are making sure that the top end is bright and it's cutting through the mix. And now we can talk about the bass, or like so-called bass of the drums. It's not really doing that much. But let me play a little bit with the so you can see how much it affects the whole sound. And we can use, for example, transformer. To give a little bit more character and definition to the snare drum, right? But I don't want to use that much dynamics here. So I think the sweet spot is around here. So let's go back to the presentation. And yeah, so again, take a look at this diagram. This is essentially what we are doing, right? Yeah, just so look, you could look a little bit more, right? So we are reshaping different frequencies when it comes to the drums here. So one more example that I wanted to show you is that you can individually reshape the balance of the frequencies. So for example, just in case, that's of course a little bit too much, but so by reshaping the whole band, you can also affect the frequency response. So pay attention how the EQ, saturation, and next the dynamics, how they all are interconnected. So this is all like one thing, one concept. So there's still a bit of dynamics when it comes to saturation, some dynamics when it comes to the EQ. So this is all like one thing, but just like three different pillars. That's it. And we can do the same thing with like this is also pretty cool. So here, there's no right or wrong. See what works for your mix, and based on that, you can make a decision how to saturate and what to do, right? So let's talk about the next thing, saturation sculpting. So, oh, sorry, not saturation sculpting. I mean the processing. So when it comes to saturation, you can apply saturation both on the drum group, exactly what I did just now, and you can also apply saturation to individual elements. So let me show you one example. So I wanted to add a little bit more power to the snares, and I decided to go with the Ableton stock saturator with the preset called the mid-range fattener. And now if I mute this one, I think we gotta compensate for the output. Right, so by doing this, because sometimes doing the group saturation is not enough, and sometimes you have to address individual sounds. So in this case, if we solo, for example, like this, I'm gonna show you what it does to the sound. So it gives a little bit more character to our snare drum, which is what I wanted. I wanted to have a little bit more accent on the snare, and you can also use different algorithms. So this one like is super aggressive. So in my case, it killed the dynamic a little bit too much. So it didn't really work. So this is why I decided to go with a little bit softer one. So the medium curve is the one that I like the most in this case. But yeah, this is the concept. So you can saturate individual sounds. This works really, really well. So for the saturation, that's pretty much it. Again, it's so simple. Just get more reps, do a little bit more, and you'll get the concept. So, and let's transition to the pillar number 3, the dynamic definition. So I picked an example which is called the study of the human skull. And let me explain. Just like the precise and detailed study of the skull, dynamic processing in drum mixing requires a meticulous approach to shaping the sound. This drawing can symbolize the level of detail and attention needed when applying compression and other dynamic effects. So just take a look at the definition. If you look at the teeth here, you can see the definition of every single teeth plus the shape of the skull. Overall, it's just like so well put together. So, for example, to illustrate this concept in real life, one example is the velocity of the individual elements, right? So we can take a look at the teeth. Let's say that the teeth are a representation of the velocity of the individual elements. Only when you program that for all the sounds, you will achieve a good groove and bounce. We could call this like the inner layer. And then I recorded the whole drum loop. Take a look at the different dynamics in the context of the whole drum loop. The second example is the groove of all the elements together. You have to meticulously apply the right amount, the right dynamic processing to make sure it sounds good. So there's the micro levels, which is the like individual sounds, and there's the macro levels. So if you look at the velocity of the shaker and see how it looks in the context of the whole drum loop, this is really what you have to understand, right? So if we go back and we take a look at the shaker. So again, to illustrate this concept, this is going to be the thing. So take a listen to the shaker. We can also do like, we can also apply a little bit of velocity range. So it's giving a little bit more in terms of the dynamics. So if we would have had the shaker just playing like this and without the velocity thing, and then compare to this one, there's so much difference, right? So this is why I think the study of the human skull is so good, because there are so many little elements in this one big skull, right? So yeah, that was the first example. Let me actually show you a couple of more. Same goes for the snares, right? So if you look at the snares here, this is very important. And a lot of people miss that. It's like so important to set your velocity right. So listen to the snare. Let me do like this. So it's like cha-ching. This difference in the dynamics, this is what is gonna give you professional sounding tech house drums. And I applied this pretty much to on the hats, not that much, because it's not that big of a deal. With the hats, you can be like, it can be a little bit more flat in terms of the dynamics. But when it comes to the snares, to the percussion, all that stuff, it is so important. So let's go back to the presentation and take a look at this. So I want to talk a little bit about the drum group processing. Let me actually go back. There's the next example that I want to talk about. So this call represents understanding the basics and advanced techniques in dynamic processing, like inner and outer layers. So again, individual elements and the groups. Where inner layer is the dynamics of the individual sounds and outer is the group dynamics. So let's take a look at this diagram. So we have the whole drum group, and sometimes you can apply compression to individual elements. I'll show you some examples. And we are also going to apply compression to the whole drum loop. So again, this is really all about understanding the micro and the macro. So let's go back to Ableton, and I'm going to show you here the micro and the macro. Let's start with the micro. So there's one really cool technique that I did applied to my clap. So listen to this. So we're gonna bypass the compressor, and I'm gonna intentionally apply a little bit more. So listen to the clap. You're gonna hear that especially well on the Cubes emulation. So even right now, the claps sound pretty well. Like, I like it. But now we could take it one level further if we apply the compression. So again, this is all about shaping the dynamics, right? So don't look at my attack, don't look at my release, because this is so dependent on the mix and what sounds you have that, like, you cannot copy my settings and then hope that that's going to work for the mix. So this is why I'm not giving you like any specific advice or tips on like, oh, make the attack short. We'll talk about that, but bear with me. So listen to the clap here. I know it is louder, but compressor works like in some way like an EQ as well. So you can see here, there's the side chain thing, or like maybe not the side chain, but basically compressor is going to react to the mids of the clap. So let me show you like this. So you can see how well it shapes the sound. And I decided to apply like, let's do maybe 65 and play with the hats. So you can see how well we can shape the dynamics of the clap with a compressor. You can still apply a volume shaper. We'll talk about that as well. But yeah, this is one example how we can apply this to micro levels, so individual sounds, right? And that's going to affect the whole groove of the group as well. So, right, let me show you without this compressor on the clap. It's still okay, right? So again. So the compressor is ducking the clap like so well. I was able to emphasize the groove so much with the clap here. Like, I absolutely love it. It just sounds great. Again, let's test on the, for example, on this one. Because without the compressor, it kind of sounds, I don't know, it just sounds kind of off to me. So we can check the levels as well. So let's check the levels with the clap. Oh wait, I think I yeah, did it wrong. So take a look at the levels. Yeah, so the levels are pretty much the same. Maybe like a little bit louder with the auto gain, but you can also compensate that. So yeah, this is an example of individual processing. Like, I think it's a really good one. So experiment with settings. Again, I decided to go with like pretty fast attack and medium fast release. So this is all going to depend on your scenario and what kind of track you have, right? So now let's talk a little bit about the group, not the group processing. I want to show you a couple of ninja tricks. So ninja trick for more pump. Maybe some of you already know this, maybe I talked about that in my videos, but basically you can sidechain individual elements to each other for better pump and groove. So what I mean here is if we go to Ableton and let me show you. So we have two hats, for example, right? And we have the hat's rhythm or the syncopated ones. So what I'm doing here, I'm sidechaining the channel number 6 onto the channel number 5. So I'm sidechaining the syncopated hats to the first hats, like open hats, so that the hats are ducking the open hats. And this is gonna give you such a great groove. Let me show you. Can do a little bit more. And without the compressor. Again, sometimes it is not very obvious, but in the context of the whole mix, once you start playing like with the whole drum loop, it's going to be amazing. We can listen on the the speaker emulation thing. So you can hear like it's ducking the sound. The same thing we are doing to the shaker. So we are ducking the shaker with the open hat. So take a listen. Maybe a little bit longer release here. Something like that should be good. And then again, we can also utilize the EQ thing here. So if we do like this. Reduce a little bit here. Let's bypass. It is still pretty good if you can get the sound selection right. But then again, those little nuances, this is the difference between like pro mix and a beginner mix. I would say something like that should be good. And then we are doing the same thing with the collapse. So we are sidechaining the collapse to the shaker with a pretty much like same curve when it comes to the sidechain response, like whatever is the name for this thing, right? So again, wait, this is not the one. If we go to the shaker, yeah, so the shaker collapse perk, take a look at this. A bit longer, actually pretty much the same attack, but a really long release. So take a listen without those two sidechain compressors. So without the sidechain compression, it almost felt like the instruments, the sounds are fighting with each other for this space here. But with this sidechain, we are ducking and we are emphasizing that groove. And like if you apply it in the right way, your tech house drums or like any electronic drums will sound amazing. Trust me, if you apply this the right way. So this is it for this ninja trick. So again, I don't want to go like too deep into that. You would have to experiment yourself. Let's go back and talk a little bit about the next thing. So it's fascinating how well nature builds different organisms, including human body. For me, it represents how we can shape the whole drum group with different dynamic tools, right? So just by looking at this, you can, again, see that there's so many little nuances, and this is why we have to be a very, very cautious, and we need to know how to use the dynamic processing. So let me break down my processing chain. So the step number one is going to be the group compression. So let's go and check the whole group, and we're going to go step by step. So after the saturation, I applied a compressor. So let's break it down. So what is happening here? Again, I'm not really doing a lot, but I will intentionally apply a lot of compression now, so you can really hear how this is all affecting the whole drum groove. So what I'm doing a lot recently is I'm using a lot of parallel processing. So I'm compressing very, very heavily, and then I'm just mixing that to the original signal. So it allows you to keep a lot of the, like, from the original signal, but also get this like really nice and compressed sound. So for the attack, it's pretty long, I would say 15 milliseconds. I didn't want to kill my transients. So you have to pick the attack to sort of emphasize all the transients together, to catch the transients, but not like squash them. So in this case, this is okay as well, but I want to... So pay attention how the punch of the clap changes here. Really, really nice. And I picked the pumping mode because I wanted to have this pumping effect. So then again, like without the, we could say, let's do 50 for now, right? Listen to the drums. It's a little bit too much compression, but you can hear how well we are gluing the sounds together. So from here, I would just mix like 30%, that's it. So it does something, but not too much. So you gotta be really gentle when it comes to the compression. The next thing that I want to talk about is going to be multi-band compression. So shaping very specific frequencies for even more glue and expansion. Let's talk a little bit about that. So the multi-band here, so what we are doing, we are compressing the lows, which in this case is more like the snare hit. It's it's not too much, just a little bit. So again, by selecting the right attack and right release, we can emphasize the groove, we can glue the instrument, so we can make sure that everything is balanced, right? So I'll go step by step here again. So try to feel the difference. So again, I want to be pretty gentle. So it's just like 1.2, 1.5 dB of gain reduction. So I'm pretty gentle here. The next step is expansion. So again, I'm adding a little bit of punch to the... So it's like it goes up on every clap hit. Again, just a little bit. But just because we have those dynamics, this is why it sounds so good, right? And then the last thing is I'm addressing the top end of the drums with a long attack and short release to let the transients come through, but still use it as some sort of like a dynamic EQ. Let me exaggerate that a bit. So maybe a little bit more here. So minus 30 should, oh wait, minus 30 should be good. So you can see how we are shaping the sound with this dynamic processing, like little by little, but this is really the key here. So let's check at 100% and then without. So the drums are like sort of too flat, right? But with this dynamic compressor, we are adding movement to the drums. It can be a little bit hard to learn dynamic multi-band compressor, but like once you learn it, like trust me, that's going to be one of the best tools that you can use both for sound design and mixing. So that's the second thing. Now, the next thing is the transient shaper. Again, so when it comes to shaping the transients, what I was trying to achieve here is to balance the attack and the sustain of the sounds. Let's do 100% first so you can feel the difference. So we are reducing the sustain on the lows a little bit. I didn't touch the attack. On the mids here, we are increasing the attack, actually quite a lot, and we are decreasing the sustain. I felt like that was the right thing to do. And then on the highs as well, so I wanted to increase the attack, those transients. And I decreased a little bit on the sustain, so we are making the transients a little bit sharper. So all together, like too flat, right? And then we just need to mix that. So about 30% should be good. $35 is also pretty good. So yeah, just see how much you really need at this point. So yeah, so that's it with the transient shaper. And the last thing is going to be the sidechain from the kick. So to achieve that punch, what we would need is a little bit of side chaining. So from the kick, I am using the side chain. And let's see. So the attack is, again, it's sort of long. The release is also pretty long, but these are the settings that I felt like sound the best. I'm also using a sidechain here. So the kick is sidechaining the drums only starting from 100. So let's do without. It is leaving a little bit more in terms of the dynamics, so maybe we can do like 80. I think that should be pretty good. Just enough, right? Again, that's 100%. And then we just mix that. Maybe 40. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the whole drum mixing tutorial. So again, I have two more things that I wanted to talk about before we end. So the one which I wanted to talk in the beginning, but it's still good for now. Let me actually disable the rest of the processing here. So I used a bit of boosting here. So it is the analog EQ emulation. So this is without. I can exaggerate that a little bit again. So what I'm doing with this essentially is, again, just shaping my drums a little bit and adding maybe some of the mids, some of the low mids, maybe the highs. Again, all depends on what you need really. But with this thing, I really like doing this after the compressor, the first one, but before the multi-band and the transient shaper. Again, you can reposition your plugins depending on, again, what you need, but this is the thing. And one last thing is going to be the clipping. So with the clipping, we are reducing, like we are giving ourselves a little bit more headroom when it comes to the mixing. So if we do it here, take a look at the levels here on the drums. So take a look at the drums. So this is with the clipper. Sorry, now without. Even though it sounds good, it's still a little bit too loud. So with the clipper, we are clipping the loudest sections. Everything sounds good. So yeah, one last thing before we end. I feel like, again, like this is without like out of the context. I don't have any instruments, I don't have anything, so I would probably reduce the drums by -175 just to compensate for all the processing that we did. And maybe do this one at like -24. So that should be pretty good. Right, so that's the final result. Yeah, so you can hear the drums are a little bit too loud. So again, this is a minor thing. Again, it will depend on the context. But yeah, this is it. So let's listen one final time. And yeah, that's going to be it with this tutorial. This is the mixed one, and this is the unmixed one. Like, kinda bad, right? So yeah. So yeah, guys, I think that's gonna be it for the drum mixing tutorial. I just watched this like 50 minutes, but this is the most detailed tutorial that I can give you from, you know, everything that I learned lately. I wanted to make it a little bit shorter, but it is what it is. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, it's for free. I'm trying to share everything that I know. So hope it is useful. Again, if you're interested in coaching, just let me know. That's going to be it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.